Hey, great to see everybody here today. Please be seated if you're standing. And welcome to another class of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. This training is very important. It comes from those who have been teaching the program for some time now in various situations, from dealing with different municipalities and governments, and also schools and businesses and you name it, just about anywhere you can imagine. And so there's a little bit of knowledge to be gained there on how to deal with certain situations. Okay. So we're moving along here. We're in the responsibility unit now, and this is the last one in this particular series. But we'll be moving on, and we'll have more on which unit we're going to later. But right now we've been talking about being prepared for emergencies and disasters when they come your way. Now, you know, an emergency is something that needs your attention like right away, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a disaster situation, but it's an emergency. You need to act on it. You need to get busy. You know, needs your attention. A disaster, on the other hand, if something tragic occurs, a lot of times that we consider the tornadoes and earthquakes and hurricanes and so forth, all the things we've been talking about as, you know, quote, natural disasters, or kind of unnatural actually. But then there's also the disasters like terrorism, germ warfare, etc. All these things come into play. And so they become emergencies really quick. And in being a responsible person, and one who's practicing the peaceful solution, practicing self-control, and taking care of your family and so forth, you would want to be as prepared as you could possibly be. Now, a lot of times, and I've been in some emergency situations, and no matter how hard you try, it seems like there's always something that you forgot. Whether it be, you know, duct tape or some kind of bandage material or a screwdriver, just some little something that you had plenty of probably, but you forgot to pack your emergency kit with it. Well, Catan left off, I believe he left off 151. He had gone over 151. We'll be on 152, but just to take a quick overview of this, I just mentioned the emergency kit over on page 150 of your responsibility unit, page 150. By the way, for those of you that are joining us online, you can download the book that we're in tonight. There's a drop-down menu. You'll find it if you look carefully. If it's kind of in one place if you're on the phone, another place if you're on the computer. But there is a drop-down menu where you can download this, the entire book, or just the lesson that we're on tonight if you like. And in fact, all the books that we've been through so far, you could go through and get all the information there that you like also. But on page 150 of your responsibility unit, it asks you, do you have an emergency kit packed and ready in case of a disaster? Okay, remember that page right there, okay? We're going to come back to it in just a minute. Over on page 151, Catan went over this information and was talking about some of the things that we need. If you look about halfway down on the page, there's bottled water. You would definitely want to have some water around, and not some that you set off in the corner and leave there for 5 years. You would want to make sure that it's fresher than that. You know, fresh water, or as fresh as it could be if it's bottled. You know, kind of rotating that stuff, you should be all right in moving it around. You know, you get it from the store and then keep it around a while. Or if you have your own well, your own water supply, you would want to bottle some up in some large canisters, probably those 3 or 4 gallon containers. You'd want to make sure you have some change of clothes for each family member. You know, you can't be wearing the same thing all the time, and you're liable to, in an emergency situation, tear something or get some clothes ruined in some manner and possibly lose your shoes. Blankets, you would want to make sure you have some blankets around. And you know, some of the things that are out there are those those silver, they're kind of like aluminum foil a little bit, but they're emergency blankets that reflect the heat back on the individual. Those are great to have too. You'd want to have some weatherproof matches and candles, and like it says right there on page 151, it says don't light these until you're sure there's no gas leaks. Of course, flashlights. You want to have flashlights. And now, these days, a lot of flashlights are rechargeable, and that's all great if you have a recharging source. You know, they last quite a while, but you have to have some source of recharging. So what a lot of people do is they have these little bitty handheld generators or solar generators or something, some way of recharging a computer or flashlight and so forth. Or you can have the kind that have batteries. If you have that kind, make sure you got some spare batteries and a lot of them. Also, it's recommended to have a AM/FM radio or a shortwave type radio with batteries, so you can get information and possibly even make contact if you have a two-way radio in case of an emergency situation. Let's go on over to page 150. All right, now at the top of 150, you know, one of the recommendations is having non-perishable food items. Non-perishable. That doesn't mean that you just bought something the other day and put in the freezer, so you have something non-perishable. You know, it is perishable. That's why you had to put it in the freezer. We're talking about things like canned items, whether it be canned the old-fashioned way in a fruit jar with a wax on the top or a sealed lid, you know, from canning things yourself or from other people, or from, you know, canned items in the traditional way in the store, like canned tuna, for instance, or you know, crackers and other snacks and so forth. You'd want to have something that you can easily get into. You want to make sure you have a can opener too, but a lot of cans nowadays have those pop tops on it, which are great to have. That's pretty handy if you have some of those. But making sure you have a can opener, something to cut with, you know. A first aid kit in case you or someone else is hurt, and this kit should have everything you need for minor emergencies. Let's stop right there and go back over to page 150 for just a minute. Now, on page 150, by the way, you want to stay hydrated. In this very, very hot weather and dry weather, people you know, that's an emergency in itself. You definitely want to stay hydrated, otherwise you can be having some emergency situations that could turn into a disaster for you and your family if you're not careful. But the emergency kit, packed and ready in case of a disaster. Another important part of preparedness is to have an emergency kit, and with that emergency kit you can have everything you'll need in case a disaster strikes. And you know, it's already been talked about with all the natural disasters, tornadoes, hurricanes, so forth. Also, in case of power outages or some type of accident. There's so many things that can occur where it would be great to have these things available. I know in Houston right now, in South Texas, not far from us, they're having a situation right now because of the hurricane and the flooding that's taking place. People's power is out. They're out of food. They don't have AC. You know, it's very hot and muggy down there. You know, everything's flooded. The stuff in their house is flooded, if they could even get to anything in there. So they're having to go to emergency centers, which the emergency centers are overcrowded. There's so many things taking place right now. And this is one of those things that somebody that's even looking at this program right now might have found themselves in this situation down around the Houston area. And if you have, you know, we hope that you have some things ready and have taken some of this to heart, because we've been talking about it a while now. And if not, if you didn't get prepared, well, now you've seen something and hopefully learned from it and can look to the future and be prepared. You know, if you come through it fine and everything. So just remember to be prepared. So some of the things that, if you look down there on the, looks like a little, let me go ahead and put it on the screen for a minute in case somebody doesn't have a book there. Let's see. Yeah, you can't really read it. It's a little foggy for some reason. Okay, well, so it looks kind of like a little suitcase type thing, and you got a couple columns there on suggestions on what you might be able to do. One of the things that says is, of course, put food and water in your emergency suitcase, your emergency kit. Extra clothing, blankets, sleeping bags. You know, it's great to have a couple sleeping bags around. First aid kit. In that first aid kit, there's a multitude of things you'll need. Just it's great to have some type of iodine, some alcohol, some Band-Aids, some bandage material, some tape, and so forth, and possibly some tongue depressor type things or short splints. You never know what you're going to run into. The radio, you'd need that. In this case, it's even suggesting that you have a gas mask and a chemical suit because we don't know exactly what's taking place. You might run into a situation where some kind of hazardous gas that's in the air from a chemical truck that turned over or got in an accident or something. It would be great to have those things, or because of germ-type warfare. You never know what's going to take place. I mean, we've seen some strange things occur in the past few years taking place on this American soil right here. And, you know, there's a situation that just occurred in a political rally where Donald Trump, the former President Donald Trump, was speaking, and there were shots that rang out. You know, and they're saying that there's one person dead and a couple people injured pretty severely. And in fact, the former president himself got nicked by a bullet, it looks like, from everything we've seen. And so the person that died on the scene there, you know, they didn't know they didn't know this was going to take place today, or that day that it took place, and yesterday, I guess, but they didn't know that it was going to take place. And how could you have been prepared for something like that? Well, the only way you could have is not to gather in really crowded situations like that. I know there's a lot of trust that goes into the Secret Service and FBI and all that stuff in those situations, but you know, it's a dangerous situation. And the heat out there, if you think about it, people gathered in that heat for all day long, hanging around there, you know. Now they had water and food and stuff available, but if you weren't prepared and you didn't have the money to get the stuff and all, well, you're sitting out there. That's an emergency situation. Not necessarily what you would expect as a normal emergency situation, but it quickly turned into one, didn't it? Being able to get away from the other people, being able to get your car out to the parking lot area, turned into a tough situation. That's one of the other things. Just like when a hurricane was coming to Houston, I'm sure there was people evacuating. I've been there personally, and so have some others sitting in this meeting room right now. Personally, when there was a hurricane coming and you had to evacuate, or if you were smart, you were evacuating, and it's no fun. There's only a couple ways out of Houston, you know, north or northwest to get away from the hurricane. And when you get on those roads and start trying to get out of there, man, it is stop and go. And sometimes there's no go to it. It's just stop. And you'll be stopped for a long time. And if you're trying to keep your engine running and you didn't have very much fuel, you know, being prepared is a great thing. When you know, and we'll talk about this a little bit later too, but when you know that there's a potential for some type of danger, you need to do a little extra preparation. Be ready for whatever comes your way. You know, fuel up. Make sure you got your emergency kit in the car with you, you know, if you're leaving in some deal like that. Because I'm going to tell you, it takes hours and hours to get out of Houston if you're trying to get out of there when a lot of people are evacuating. But anyway, in your emergency kit, it also says to have something to eat and drink. Have some clean clothes to change into. Have something for warmth, you know, the blankets and so forth. Something for medical emergencies. Something to provide light, you know, flashlight and batteries and so forth. And listen to the news reports, you know, have a radio or your phone and make sure you have a way of charging that up. You know, being prepared for all these things. And it does list possible germ warfare and possible terrorist attack. How many people have been caught up in a terrorist attack and they didn't even know what was going on and they were not prepared for that? And that's what terrorists try to do. They try to catch people off guard, those not prepared, you know. So, getting back over to page 152, so that was, we kind of got it back over there when we started talking about the first aid kit, but also a sewing kit, something that you could repair some fabric or clothing with. And you know, those little needles can come in handy for many other reasons too, even medical, and the thread also. But prescription medications, there's a lot of people that are taking medications and might not have any in their emergency kit. You know, they're all in the on the kitchen counter or in the bathroom or something like that. It's great to have some extra if it's available for you to have extra. It's great to have some extra on hand in case you have to, you know, evacuate and you can't get a hold of your doctor and everything's flooded out and so forth, or whatever the case might be, just like in the case of a terrorist attack. You know, but any of these disasters. Plastic bags, they can be used for a lot of different things. You can have some of those small plastic bags, which would come in handy, and you can shove those in your kit, or also some regular type kitchen, those, I think they call them 13-inch plastic bags. Those come in really handy for many different reasons, including sanitation. I mean, if you're stuck out there on the road, people don't like to talk about it, but you know, the body has functions that must continue on. And so it would be great to have some way of handling that too in an emergency situation. Toilet paper. Toilet paper comes in very handy to have for various uses, including, you know, blowing the nose or creating a bandage or just lots of different things, even to write on. Or tissue, Kleenex, you know. The hand wipes, these are extremely handy. You know, those little wipes that are in the little container, and it comes right out the top. You just pull it out. It's pre-dampened wipes. Man, those things are so handy in so many different instances. Just even if you're dealing with something that you don't know who touched it last or whatever. A lot of those can be used in sanitizing too. Some of them can, and they sure help in keeping your hands clean. And you know, if you get dirt on your face or something, they come in really, really handy to have, and they're kind of refreshing. You know, if you're out there in the sand and dirt and stuff, it's really refreshing to clean your face with one of those. Of course, you'd want to consider having some money. Because if you get to some place, if you're leaving an affected place where there's a disaster is taking place and you're going somewhere else, you're going to want to be able to afford to deal with the situation when you get there. And yeah, a credit card, that's fine. You could even call in advance and you know, save a place or whatever, or use it to buy things along the way if there's anything left to be bought. You know, people tend to empty out the stores pretty quick when there's some type of natural disaster or some kind of disaster around an emergency situation. They're emptying stuff out like toilet paper, like the wipes, like water, you know, bottled water, bread, some basic stuff like that. They clear out really quick. You go in there thinking you're going to buy something, and it ain't there. It's just not there. So being prepared is the way, but it's great also to have some physical money. You know, whether it be paper money or coins, or, you know, sometimes people have some pieces of silver laying around, some old silver coins or silver, little silver bars or gold, you know, if you've got it. And those can come in handy if there was a serious situation and the money supply failed. It would be better to have some type of precious metal type coin or something than to have the paper money. People would say, man, that's worthless, you know. Here's one right here, which, you know, you kind of laugh. It's well, it says a roll of duct tape and nylon rope. Duct tape is actually a brand, and duct tape is where this stuff came from. This silver tape that's really adhesive, or white, whatever color it is. They have different colors now, but it was actually designed for, you know, air conditioning and heating and air ducts, just DUCT, you know, duct tape. And And then, of course, since you pull it out and it goes kind of quack, quack when you pull it out there, then a company took hold of that and called theirs duct tape, which is fine, you know, but they do make duct tape that's not duct tape if you want to get some. So it's handy to have. Duct tape, man, it covers a lot of different things. It's you might even look around in this building and see some on the insulation. In fact, I'm looking right now and I do see some that was used on the insulation. It can be used in a lot of different areas. If your shoes are falling apart, you can wrap that shoe and keep the sole of your shoe on for a while. If you don't have any shoes, you can wrap your feet in duct tape and be able to walk on a rougher surface than you would if you were barefooted. It works really great, and if you had to create something to hurt your arm, you had to hold it up, it would be a great thing to wrap around. I mean, a couple rolls of duct tape would not hurt to have some of that available in your emergency kit. It could come in really, really handy. If your window didn't stay down on your car and the rain was just pouring in because of a hurricane, you could put that thing up there, and if you could find a dry spot to stick it to, man, it'll hold that window up, you know. There's just all kinds of things you can do with duct tape. That's one of the very important things to have in my book is some of that stuff, you know. Some nylon rope. You never know when you're going to need that. Absolutely. Have you some rope. Probably wouldn't help to carry that big thick stuff, but if you had some of the smaller stuff available that would fit inside your emergency kit. And then some basic tools. Now, you know, basic tools, when you say that to somebody, to one person, they might think, well, I got to have this circular saw, and I got to have my hammer and my chisel, and, you know, I mean, these basic tools that they would have to have, you know. But I think what we're talking about in basic tools is something you could stuff inside your little emergency kit, you know, maybe a small hammer, a couple screwdrivers, or one of those variable screwdrivers, you know, where you could pop out the straight tip and put in the Phillips tip, you know, and maybe some of the other tips you could put in there. Maybe a utility knife, you know, utility knife, hammer, screwdriver, just some basic stuff, you know. It actually says here, hammer, nails, screwdriver, screws, all that stuff could come in handy for some repairs that you might have to have. I think a hammer and a screwdriver would be very handy to have, if nothing else, you know. Basic stuff, okay? You could get carried away and want to have your tool for checking the codes on your car, or having you know, some kind of specialty wrench in there and everything. Nah, just leave it at home. Just get your basic emergency kit, okay? All right, so you can store these supplies in a duffel bag or a suitcase. You know, myself, I have a duffel bag. I do have an emergency kit, and in that emergency kit, I do have pretty much everything that we have listed here. In fact, I can't think of anything here that I don't have, except possibly, you know, I don't have any extra shoes in there. But everything else that's listed here, I have. Well, I don't have the money in there either. I don't have much money, so, you know, the little bit I probably carry with me here, but. And it's not much, so, you know, don't think you're going to get a lot out of me. But so just basic stuff, you know, and really that duct tape and the rope and the hammer and nails and stuff, man, you got to have it. All right, so you can store these in a duffel bag or a suitcase. Wrap the bag or suitcase in plastic so it'll be waterproof. I need to do that myself. And then put it in a safe place like a closet or under bed where it's easily accessible in case of emergency. And know where it's at. And let your family know where it's at too. Don't be moving it around. You know, oh, I moved it over there and forgot to put it back, or we were cleaning over there and it got moved off into the shed and I never did take. Because you know what? When you start looking for something like that, there's no time to go looking. You need to go to where it's at and get it and get out. That's what it's about. You don't change that stuff up on a continual basis. That's the stuff that you do. You put it in one spot, you train your family where that one spot is, and that's where they go to get that. Everyone knows where it's at, okay? That's what you have to do. And, you know, speaking of that, you know, and I really can't stress that enough. You really need to have it, because I know someone right now that has a semi-kit put together. It's about it's not a big duffel bag, but it's probably half the size of a normal duffel bag, if you guys know what I'm talking about. And they've got some stuff in there. It's not complete, but they've got most of the stuff. But I bet right now, if I asked them, they might not know where it was at exactly, because they've got a few different places, you know. And I know they've moved some stuff around recently, and I'm going to ask them after class just to see if they know where it's at. And this is very important. That's why I'm kind of mentioning this. It's so extremely important to know where it's at. Closer to the way out of the building, the better, probably, you know. All right, well, let's move on over here a little bit. And, oh, notice the quote at the bottom of the page of page 152. It is better to have and not need than need and not have. I know I have a little bit of food that is not only in my emergency kit, but I have some more put aside. And, you know, occasionally I try to eat some of that and then replenish it and all. And sometimes I look around and I'm like, wow, I've got a lot of that stuff right there. And then I remember this very saying right here. Well, not necessarily that it was on this page, but something of the sort, in that, you know, it's better to have it and not have to use it than need it and it not be there. That's something great to remember. So if you have the wherewithal, the money, or the ability to put some of this stuff away and do it, then you should. All right, so page 153, if we go on over there, here's another thing that's so very important too, is to have a meeting place. Now, the less people you have in the household, the easier this is to accomplish. You know, in fact, you might be around each other and can say, okay, let's get out the door or whatever. But if you've got children, or if you've got 4 or 5 family members in the building, okay, it changes all of a sudden. And now you have a problem on your hands if you have not done this thing right here. So for those of you that need to, let's get hydrated. All right. And so let's take a look at that. Along with an emergency kit, you should have or also have a designated area outside of your home where you and your family can meet. Now, you know, inside the house too, you need to have a plan. You need to have a plan on getting out of the house. You know, I know a lot of us have back in school, they used to have fire drills and so forth, and occasionally when we're having one of our events here, we have a fire drill, so everybody knows the way out of the building, and then they have a designated place to meet outside the building also. But in your house, you should have a plan on what to do in case of an emergency, and if you're trying to make sure everyone's together there as they're coming out of the house, that's fine, but you're making sure everyone knows where the item is, your kit, on the way out of the house, so someone gets that. But have a meeting place outside to where everybody can go, and you know, the one in charge at the time should look around and make sure everybody's there. If they're not, then you know somebody's missing. But let's read this right here. It says, there are many tragic stories of people dying because they went back into a burning house to save a family member, and it turns out they were already outside in a safe place. Read that again. There are many tragic stories of people dying and also getting hurt because they went back into a burning house to save a family member who was already outside and in a safe place. Because, again, when these things take place, the thinking changes. You know, we're all sitting here nice and calm right now, and we're, you know, reading over this, and we've got the picture in our brain about, you know, we're kind of playing a little videotape in our head about where our stuff is at if we have it, or we need to get some, so we're thinking about going to the store, and we're seeing this vision of what we're going to do or what we're doing or what we have done. But guess what's missing? What's missing is the fear factor, the excitement factor, the adrenaline flowing, all this, because people don't in an emergency, their thinking kind of goes out the window sometimes. You might think that you're going to think rationally and everything fall in place, but it doesn't really occur like that much. And that's why these suggestions are in place, to have that stuff together, to have the meeting place, to train your family on what to do. That means that it has to become like memory. Some call it muscle memory. It's the thing that you know to do. Emergency occurs, bam, everyone knows exactly what to do, and then they do it. They just do it without yelling and screaming and all that stuff. With all the drama and all the everyone getting all hyper and everything. So this is very important. In this case, in the burning house, if they had planned a designated meeting area, these tragedies could have been avoided. And then it has a few more tips available for you right there on this page. It says hot tips, and those hot tips would be to put together a miniature emergency kit and carry it with you. Yeah, so you could have one in your car that you carry around all the time too. But in case there's an emergency and you're not at home, you can still be somewhat prepared. Encourage your family to take a course in CPR and first aid. I know there's people in this room right here that have done that very thing. Ask your parents if you can learn how to turn off the gas, electricity, and water valves at your home. If you're a young person, then make sure you ask. If you're an old person, you should know how to do most of that stuff already, but if you don't, learn how. It could save your life or somebody else's. One of the things in your first aid kit too, when it's talking about clothing and so forth, it wouldn't hurt to have some type of a rain suit or what do they call those things? Ponchos, that could go over your head and over the majority of your body. Something you could throw on real quick, protect you from some of the elements and help out a little bit, So, and those things are little fold-up things. They don't take up any space. They fit really well in your emergency kit. Let's move on over to page 153. Now, some of these things, 154, excuse me. Some of these things you might consider to be so basic that you're like, oh man, this is so basic. Why doesn't everybody have this already? Because it's so basic. But really, there's a lot of people that haven't even thought of getting any kind of emergency kit available. They just come home and go to work and come home and go to work, and that's it, So it's really something you should do. Don't take it for granted. Don't take it for granted at all. Okay. So I should come back here to the lesson plan, even though the procedure's already been covered. But procedure number 8 on lesson plan 7, page E, let's go look at that real quick. And procedure 8, of course, it's been covered down to the point where we started tonight, talking about preparing the emergency kit on our own, and then looking at page 152 and 151 and 152 and finishing up on those. And then procedure number 9 says, conclude the lesson by reminding students that they have learned how responsibility is developed, the important role it plays in how we interact with others, and how responsible choices can help us avoid risky behavior, and how to be responsible for their safety. And emphasize that responsibility is a positive character trait that is important in the lives of each individual and society as a whole. So between procedure number 8 and procedure number 9, I meant to mention this to you, we have some pages that aren't listed, but we are actually going through right now. It's still part of the lesson, and it hasn't been ignored by any means. It's something that we need to go over, and it's part of that conclusion phase. So we're going over those pages, 153, 154, 155, and then we'll get to the point of 156 on what I've learned, and we'll have an opportunity to completely conclude the lesson at that time. I don't think we're going to get quite that far on 156 at this time before this lesson is over with, but we might. On page 154. So, for a rainy day. Have you ever heard the saying, save some for a rainy day? Well, disaster preparedness is a great example of this saying. Another important aspect of preparedness is for families to stock up on items that they use on a regular basis. So, different people use different things. I know I would probably want to have a toothbrush and some toothpaste in my emergency kit, some little hygiene things, I do brush my teeth, like most of you in this room probably do. But, I do know somebody that has, I hesitate to say never brushed their teeth, but haven't brushed their teeth for many, many, many years. But they floss continually, and they have some herbs that they use. I believe one of them is licorice. You'll see this man have a licorice stick hanging in his mouth, and his teeth are white and clean and healthy, and his gums are healthy and everything. So I'm not telling you not to brush your teeth. I'm just saying that it's different strokes for different folks. Some might want the toothbrush and toothpaste. Some might want the licorice and floss or whatever, So whatever the case, stock up on some of these items that you would need, and for your emergency kit too. So another important aspect of preparedness is for families to stock up on items they use on a regular basis. In other words, put some away for a rainy day. Keep in mind, supermarkets will not be open if there's a power outage. Even now, a lot of them don't have backup power. I would think that they would be trying to do something like that, but there are a lot of businesses still that do not have backup power. If roads are blocked, delivery trucks with food and other necessities aren't going to be able to reach your town. And, who knows how much of the distribution center might be destroyed or might be flooded or something. Almost all these grocery stores around get their food from distribution centers, and a lot of them get them from the very same place. If you have I'm not going to use the examples in Abilene, and I think some of them have their own dedicated facilities, but I know in Arkansas, a great example is there are many grocery stores, all of them with a different name and owned by a different person, and they all get their stuff from a distribution center on Interstate 30. It's I think it's called IGA. It's just a food distribution chain that supplies. They've got a huge warehouse. I mean, it is so massive, and they have refrigerated areas and so forth, and they ship that stuff out to Joe's Country Market over here on the south side of town, and to Ben's Market over here on the east side of town, and over to the Kroger over on the north side of town, and over to, you name it. This food is going out to these facilities. So they're all buying it. They're paying probably close to the same price for it and all. If that distribution center is down, guess what? That food's going to go away in those stores real quick, and it's not going to be replenished. That's just how it works. So the delivery trucks and food might not be able to reach your town. The supermarkets in the area might sell out of some of the stocked items, and it might take days or even weeks to get more food and other supplies to restock the shelves. You might think too, if you have a sweet tooth. Now, some might say, no, candy is not a necessity. But if you are used to eating candy on a normal basis, like, every day you're eating on some of those red Twizzlers or some sweet tarts or something like that, if you're doing that every day or it's kind of a staple in your diet, then you better have some, because what you're going to be doing if you don't is you're going to be craving that item. And if the emergency goes on for more than a day or two, you might find yourself in kind of a situation where you're having withdrawal from those things, Let's talk about some basics like coffee or something. You want to have some basic stuff with you if you're used to doing those things on a daily basis. And that's why it says that, stock up on the items that you use on a regular basis, put some away for a rainy day. You'll want to have some of that stuff. Is it comfort type food? Yeah. In a lot of cases it is, but sometimes you need that too. Some people might find themselves in a situation where they have to have something sweet because of their metabolism, or the other way around. I mean, there's all kinds of things to think about. So anyway, it might take them days or weeks to restock, and therefore during a disaster, people are sometimes unable to get food, water, and other necessities for weeks at a time. So if you look back, just pull up on, just Google it, and pull up some of the latest disasters that have taken place. I mean, there's been plenty in the last month in various places around the world, around this nation. And of course, around the world, some places people aren't so used to going into a supermarket and getting their stuff, but still, they still have to prepare and have something there if they even have it to prepare with. But every place is different. But you could Google this and go back and look and see some of the things that took place. You can check and see what the situation was with the grocery stores, with people in general. There's all kinds of articles that you can find on these things. And anyway, that's something that you'll want to do and take a look at, so you can have your own knowledge of it and kind of get some ideas on what you might want to do. Not having the bare necessities can turn a situation from bad to worse. This can be avoided if everyone took responsibility for their safety and survival by storing non-perishable foods such as canned meats and vegetables, rice, sugar, salt, potato flakes, so forth. Even in a short-term emergency situation, and you're around a lot of folks. I mean, no one wants to see anyone starve. If it's a situation where you could possibly help out, and not going and giving all your stuff away all the time, but in an emergency situation, and there's people that around you that need a drink of water or are starving, it might be something that you could help out with. I know that that lots of times in history, people have come together in those situations, come together, and everyone kind of gave of what they had. If they had water, they brought water. If they had food, they brought food, in order to help everybody make it through that situation. I know some of the grocery stores, not all, but some of the grocery stores opened their doors and sent water out and basics out to people that needed it in some of these situations. Then there's some that kept their doors closed tight and held on to what they had. I mean, it's their call, it's their stuff, If you've got young children, like a baby in the family, you might know you got to be prepared there too. You'll want to have some diapers and some type of food for the baby to eat. You want to have that. It mentions again the toilet paper, the water, all these things, matches, candles, flashlights. When you start putting together an emergency kit, you start finding out what you're lacking. You put it in there, you go back and look at it. If you go back and look at your emergency kit, if you have one, I know a lot of you in this room do, but if you go back and look at it and just start poking through there, and you might find that you're missing something, like a flashlight. If you've got pets around, you'll want to try to have something around to take care of them, so they're not harassing other people. But it's recommended that each family stock up on enough supplies to last 1 to 3 months. That's a lot. And yeah, you can make food last a long time, and you could go a long time without food, way longer than you can without water. You need to stock up on water. You need to have some water available. People use water on a daily basis, and they use a lot of it. Speaking of which, if you don't get plenty of it, you can get dehydrated. If you haven't been there before, well, it's nothing great. All right. So, of course, it has a picture down there of some of the things that you could do. Jelly, flour, some bottles of this and bottles of that, just different stuff. Toilet paper, rice, etc., toothpaste, just a little idea thing. You can go online too and see what a great emergency kit looks like. They sell them also kind of pre-packaged and ready to go. if you just can't seem to get it started yourself, you might get one of those and pull out what you don't need and put in what you need. Everyone's going to have, like I said, their own situation, their own snacks that they want, their own food that they want, their own thing that they need, maybe medications and so forth. All right, so if you're a young person, explain to your parents and guardians that buying food to stock up for disaster would cost less in bulk than buying one or two at a time. And then it gives the indication that most water only has a shelf life of about a year. But, and it says explain to your parents or guardians. This could be also someone, I said a young person. You don't have to be young. You could be older. But if you have a guardian or someone in authority where you live, like wife with a husband and so forth, or children with a mom or dad or what have you, explain this thing to them. They might already know, but they might not. And when it talks about the water, it means that you've got to replace that stored water so that you'll always have fresh water. If your stored water is near the expiration date, you can use it for your pets or to water your flowers, or of course you can always boil water down and purify it too. But it's recommended that you not be drinking distilled water all the time, because it pulls minerals out too. You want to have some great water available. But anyway, it says here, just rinse the bottles out, refill them with fresh water, and put the cap on, store it again. You can also use empty soda or juice bottles to store water for bathing purposes, etc. Yeah, you don't have to go to the store and buy these big old nice containers that stack on top of each other and hold 4 or 5 gallons. You can use the soda bottles, the water bottles, the juice bottles. I see sometimes people walking around with these lemonade bottles or orange juice bottles that hold couple quarts, and they're pretty handy. They can hold a lot of water. Bathing purposes. You might find yourself in a situation where you don't get to go and jump in that jacuzzi tub and take a bath, or in that shower with one of those big rain shower or waterfall shower heads, using all the water and just living in luxury. You might not have that available. And there's probably not many of you guys that do that here. Some of you might. I don't know. It's whatever you want to do. But we should try to conserve water as best we can. And so when you're in a disaster situation, emergency situation, that water is a commodity. And it's a very needed commodity. Needed for drinking and, yes, needed for cleaning. So the less amount you can use in the cleaning department gives you more in the drinking department, and you have to have water to live. You can't go very long without water, without drinking water. I think the max is 2 or 3 days. Food, you can go a very long time without food. You might not be comfortable, and you might not like it, and you might feel weak and all that, but you can live for a while without food. But you better get that water. So you find yourself maybe using a little, those little bathroom cups, those little 2 or 3 ounce bathroom cups. You might find yourself washing off with one of those things to conserve the water. So store the things you need now, so that if there's a disaster, you will have what you need to survive at that time. Let your parents or guardians know that you learned they do not have to buy everything all at once. That's right. You don't have to go out and buy everything all at once. If you don't have a disaster kit, you don't have to go out and say, well, I can't get one because they want $50 for it. I don't have $50. You don't have to go there. You can start right now in putting your emergency kit together with a bottle of water. And then you can take some toothpaste or something, and then you can take a flashlight if you have one, or some matches or what have you. You can just do it little by little by little until you have it set aside. A few items at a time is a start, and starting is an important part of being prepared. And, I started 20-something years ago in preparing a disaster kit. And like I said, every now and then I look at it and think, what am I missing from there? And like I thought about it tonight, and I said, you know what, I think that I'm missing a pair of shoes, an extra pair of shoes. So I think that's one of the things I'm going to work on trying to get that handled. And, but the worst case scenario is you've got to have water. Water and food, you've got to have water, okay? So work on that. Here's what it all boils down to. Knowing about disasters, which we know about them now, even if you've never been in any type of disaster situation, I think most people that are up there in the years a little bit have been in some kind of disaster situation, whether it be the tornado or the hurricane or earthquake or big car wreck or something, or having some type of medical emergency and these things. I think most people here have probably been through some kind of disaster, some kind of emergency situation, and so we know a little bit more and understand the importance of it a little bit more than those who have not. A lot of the young people have not been involved in much of these situations, and so learning about it as much as you can by, of course, coming to class, which you've been doing, but also searching out, Googling it and so forth, or you can read about it in books and encyclopedias and so forth. Knowing these things, it can affect you and your family. Having a plan, an emergency kit, and the stored food, water, and other basic necessities are important to your survival. Be responsible. And remember, this book is the responsibility unit, the one that we're in right now. Boy, that is really zoomed in right there. Let's see. There we go. All right, so the responsibility unit, that's it right there. And so be responsible for your safety. Encourage your family to be responsible for their safety as well. Share what you've learned in this chapter with your parents and guardians and other family members so that you and your family can be prepared in case disaster strikes. So as a teacher of the Peaceful Solution, it's up to us to be aware of these things too, so we can relay the things that we've seen, the things that we've been a part of, and also try to find out from others, what they might be lacking in their understanding of this situation. I don't know myself what it would be like not to be aware of emergency situations. I've been in many of them, so I just don't even know what it would be like. But there are some people who really could probably say they've never been involved in any type of real emergency situation. I don't know if any in this room right now that I'm looking at could, but there are some people out there. So giving a little quick review here before we get started on the total review of what I've learned for the entire chapter, which we'll get started on that in the next class. That'll be page 156. That'll be where we'll be on the next class, which will also be on the 17th at 5:30 p.m. It'll be Wednesday the 17th at 5:30 p.m. We look forward to seeing you all here again at that time, and we'll be starting on page 156. But looking back over this was a pretty long chapter, and going back to even where the lesson plan starts right there to the first couple pages after that, there's one there on page 130 that says to test your disaster knowledge. You might go back to that page and just test your disaster knowledge. I mean, really do it, because, like I said, all of us have different situations. I've been involved in many different situations. Some of you might not have been. So go back and look. I remember, I might have mentioned this in a previous class, but I remember when I was a child, very young child in elementary school, I remember that we used to have drills. We used to have nuclear bomb drills. Those nuclear bomb drills consisted of, if we saw a light flash out the window, a super bright light, or heard something, a big blast, we immediately needed to get down underneath the desk. That's what it consisted of. That was our nuclear explosion training right there, okay? So I don't think that would help a whole lot at this time. Now that we know a little bit more about it, I guess if we were very, very, very far away from the blast, Getting under the desk might protect us from some of the glass shards or something, you know, but we would probably just be burned up. But that's one of the things, is that some of the drills I look back on, and they were a little bit funny now when I think about it, on how things were done. So, and all of us have had those different experiences on the fire drills. Think about all the fire drills you've gone through in school. If you were at a business when they had a fire drill. Here, when we have an event, sometimes we have a fire drill. So think about that, all those drills you've been through, test your disaster knowledge, analyze your answers, and then realize, are you prepared or are you not prepared? So remember, on the tornadoes and hurricanes and some of these things, you get an advance notice a lot of times. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's in the middle of the night, more so with a tornado than with, or the high winds more than a hurricane. Usually a hurricane, you have quite a bit of advance notice that it's coming your way, and you might want to start preparing for worst case scenario, or at least evacuating. With tornadoes, they pop up. But if you're watching the weather, if you realize there's some inclement weather around and you're seeing that strange looking sky and there's thunderstorms and everything coming around, you know, you can be somewhat prepared for that situation. So nothing really beats having advanced knowledge of these things taking place and advanced preparation on what to do in case of it. So you're not in a world of your own just sitting around waiting. You know, you can see things taking place. You hear news reports, you see the weather reports and so forth, and other people saying, oh, you know, we're going to have some high wind tonight and all. So, you know, take all that into consideration. Get prepared for these things. On page 139, it mentioned that advance warning is your best defense to get away from these situations. Because once it's there, now you're in react mode, you know. So I highly encourage you to go back and look through all these things. Check out your emergency kit. Remember your hot tips, and then what it all boils down to. And let's be prepared to start on page 156 in the next class, which is, once again, Wednesday the 17th at 5:30 p.m. Look forward to seeing all of you again. Thank you.